Hi, I'm Umesh and this is Sprint Retrospective number 1. So for our project, we were tasked to actually create a automatic student attendance check-in system. So for sprint number 1, um, our team was actually to create the backend system first. So sprint number 1 lasted for 2 weeks, from week 5 to week 6. So week 5 on Monday, that was on the 12th of August, and we ended on the Friday of week 6, which was on the 23rd of August. So so all the relevant user stories for sprint number 1 was user story 1 to 9, and all these were actually part of how we create the backend system. And the way we divided this was user story 1 and 7 was done by Raman, user story 8 and 9 was done by Gina, user story 3 to 6 was done by Kavita, and user story number 2 was done by me. So yeah, that's how we divided our work, and all of us were expected to work for 2 weeks for each of our user stories that were assigned to us. So let's move on to the individual component. And so for my user story number 2, my task was actually to create a entity relationship diagram, or the database design for our student attendance system. So the steps that I took was, first of all, I created a use case diagram to identify the key stakeholders, the users, as well as the key functions that they needed to carry out. After that, I created a class diagram just to reflect the use case diagram. So the use case diagram took about a day. The class diagram took another 2 days. After that, I formally created the tables for all the stakeholders. So that was the students, the teachers, the parents, the administrators, and the schools. So that took another 2 days, and finally, after I had the whole picture, I could finally then create the entity relationship diagram, which took 2 days as well. And the last task was actually to create the SQL statements for the ERD diagram, and that took another 1 day. So what specific stream knowledge did I apply to this task? So one of the key task was actually to create the entity relationship diagram, and we learned that during our database course in uni. So that course was very relevant and useful in order for me to complete task number 3, 4, 5, which was to create tables, create the ERD diagram, and create the SQL statements. So yeah, so that was directly relevant to our project. So what did I learn from this project? I think before I started on the ERD diagram, I wanted to make sure that I identified the key stakeholders as well as the key functions that we needed to put in our diagram. So for that, I created the use case diagram as a class diagram, and these were diagrams that I had not specifically learned in any of our courses before. So that was actually something I had to pick up along the way, and without that, I wouldn't have been able to create the ERD diagram. So yeah, so that was something new that I learned during the project. And lastly, what could have gone better? So initially, I thought just creating the ERD diagram would have been a lot more simpler than it was. So I estimated that it would probably take about 6-7 days for the whole thing. But I realized that when I started to actually do it, it was a little bit more complicated than I thought it was. So I had to then create the use case diagram, the class diagram, before I could finally create the correct ERD diagram. So that was one thing that I learned. So maybe I would have estimated, or I would have given more time for myself to actually carry out all these tasks. Yeah, thank you.